We're talking about the experiential learning course application endorsement process in addition to the experiential learning seed grant process today. I'm Colin Walker. We've got Dr. Michael Black here for Director of Institutional Effectiveness. I'm sure you all recognize his name, at least from emails along the way. We've got Dean Savoy here from the Honors College, who I typically work very closely with, but right now I am technically remote because I'm here with my daughter, who, no, don't worry, she's not in the same room as me right now. So she's probably not going to make a guest appearance unless there's really something going on. But I do apologize in advance if there are any dogs barking or a child crying. Well, that's part of working remotely. And then we have Deborah here today from the Master's Social Work program. And then we also have Karen here for middle secondary education in the Education College. All right, so again, we're going to be talking about this application process relative to fall 2023 activities. So we apply a semester in advance for these things because we are working toward a goal where these courses and programs are pre-identified, and there would actually be some sort of label, moniker, something where students actually see this while registering for class. So that they know this is an experiential learning endorsed course activity. So if you guys have any questions along the way, feel free to just use the hand raise thing and or just pop a message in the chat because I try to kind of watch that along the way. Even if it's one of those like, hey, you just want to get your thoughts down, throw it out there. Don't worry, it's not really going to throw me off, and or I'm just going to try to loop it into the discussion naturally. So for the experiential learning endorsements, they are for both course activities and programs. And when we say programs, we don't mean entire academic programs. We mean that maybe if you have a program in your program that maybe is not under a traditional course moniker, it might apply. So we wanted that flexibility there. We do ask for separate applications to be submitted for each course. However, if you are working with other folks, and let's just say that you teach section A of a class and your colleague teaches section B. Well, when we endorse a course activity, it's only going to be for that person that applied. So if, let's say, Deborah, you apply for section A, it doesn't mean that sections B, C, and D all have to do the same exact thing. However, if they do want to do the same thing, they could ride your coattails and get that endorsement as well. So that's just something to kind of consider along the way because we want to make people's lives easier as well. We have moved to a fully online application process, so it's all being done via Microsoft Forms for both the endorsement and the seed grant application. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And if you know folks that are working with first and second year students, we highly encourage just kind of speaking with them about this because kind of the paradigm here is we want to get the students involved in experiential learning as early as possible. That way we're priming them for more complex projects in their third, fourth, or even graduate level studies as well. So walking through the application, and again, don't worry, this PowerPoint ends up being put online anyway, so don't feel like you have to write down every single thing that I'm putting on the screen. In the application, it's going to ask who the principal instructor and or program coordinator is. It's going to ask about the course name and title, the CRN numbers. If for some reason it's not on there just yet, that's okay. You can just put a dummy one in there and then eventually put a note in later on saying CRN has not been assigned yet for a given course. We ask about the number of credits, the term. So is it a fall only activity? Is it a spring only activity? Is it fall and spring, summer, etc.? And then the estimated frequency of offering as well, along with the length. So especially with, let's say, a study abroad trip, you might have one that's only 7 days versus I think I've seen ones as long as 4 to 6 weeks in some instances. With the QEP, the 3 main goals that we were going after are going to be, goal number 1 was focused on research and creative inquiry. So that traditional style research, but also kind of opening it up to the more creative side of the house as well. The second goal was focused on global citizenship. So most people think about this as just study abroad, but however, this can also be how you do things in a global manner as well, where maybe you're looking at ways to approach diversity and other cultural differences here in the United States, or even honestly in this region. I actually just had an instructor this morning that emailed me about a student that just enrolled in I think one of the teaching graduate programs, that he's doing that because he felt he had a great experience working with, I think it was Valdosta high school students on teaching Spanish. So that's just kind of a way to think about that. Could be a global citizenship type thing without actually traveling outside the country. And then goal number 3 is focused on servant leadership and community engagement. So that's a lot of that kind of typically service-based learning that may happen. With the QEP, the goal is to select at least one goal. You can do more than one goal. Some instances, you might have it that goal number 1 and 3 apply, but more is not necessarily better in this instance, not going to increase the likelihood of getting the endorsement. This is honestly just for coding purposes, because when we endorse a course activity, we are applying University System of Georgia level codes to these courses. So this is a way to honestly help each one of your programs be recognized at the state level and knowing that the experiential learning is happening. So this is not just a university level code that nobody else is going to see outside the institution, which makes this kind of a unique opportunity. So with experiential learning, with the way that we're defining it here at Valdosta State, we based a lot of it on David Kolb's research, and we just boiled it down to the experiential learning cycle defined as concrete experience to reflective observation to abstract conceptualization, and then to active experimentation, which we're going to walk through each one of those and what that exactly means. The reason why we present it like this is because in the application for the course endorsement, this is all we're focused on. We're trying to just get everybody to structure out their experiences so that we understand how you all are structuring your experiences along the way. And if you do have questions, let me know. I even talk about later on how I like for everybody, typically about a week or so before the application deadline, if you have questions, just email me. I would rather get the questions out of the way now rather than try to do that later on after the fact, because that becomes a little bit more difficult at that point because of the timeline that we're on, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So with the concrete experience, and you'll see these on the QEP website as well, this is just a list of activities to potentially consider as part of the concrete experience. And what I'm going to do along the way is kind of walk you all through an example of an endorsed course activity, which I will admit it's one of the courses that I teach as part of the activity. But I did not endorse my own course. Actually, Dean Savoy and Dr. Black had to endorse it, and they put me through a rigorous peer review process for that. And you might think I'm joking about that, but we did a lot of back and forth, and it kind of helped me understand how I could even get better at teaching that course activity. So with the course I teach, one of the courses I teach is about sports media production. So up till I think it was 2019, we did all the live VSU football game streams. That was actually a class doing it. It wasn't paid students doing it. Their payment, I think, was pizza. So we did that for about 7 years that we did that. And now we do some basketball games. So we had to think about how do we structure that into experiential learning. So with ours, the concrete experience comes in the form of observations. So to be able to understand how to put on an entire operation, we decided that we needed students to observe. So with VSU Athletics, now what they're doing is they have a paid working crew that's doing those games. So I have my students go out and actually shadow those individuals as they're doing the games. And I work closely with a gentleman named Mr. Jamie Abbott. He and I have known each other for quite a few years now. And we structure out the experience so that students are observing specific activities so that they understand what's going to be expected of them along the way. And a lot of the students will tell me about how that experience kind of opens their eyes a bit, and they realize there's a lot more to the operation. Uh, and we learn that information through the reflective observation activity that they do. So you see different ways that you can do this. Most people think about short reports or journaling. That's kind of the classic style of reflective observation. But you can do rhetorical questioning. It could be peer analysis, maybe even do a peer review process along the way. So I do that with the students in this activity, and they do this by actually doing a journaling activity within 7 days, because I want to keep it as fresh as possible to gain those observations. But then later on, I actually have them kind of report out to the class about that as well. So you'll see here some guiding questions that we ask the students along the way in terms of what are the responsibilities of the position that you observed, what activities and situations maybe defied your expectations or even met expectations along the way. Because in this class, I am working with typically junior and senior level students, just to kind of give perspective on that. So as you see, the goal is to kind of see how the students react to somewhat of a less structured learning experience, because they're normally used to someone standing up in the front of the room telling them do all these things, rather than they kind of need to figure out kind of what is going on. And normally they say it takes about, depending on the sport, a quarter or a half to kind of figure out what all is actually happening during that event. And then we go to the abstract conceptualization part. So this is the part that I find with a lot of faculty, they're not sure how to exactly define this. So this is the part where the students are maybe proposing the project that they're going to do eventually based on what they've learned, maybe creating some sort of strategy along the way as well for how they can take what they've learned from their observation activity and now apply it so that it's an applicable project along the way. So as you see, concept mapping, framing and explaining events, constructing models along the way. So if you're more research heavy, it could be coming up with a hypothesis and coming up with a method, and hey, we're going to try this experiment. That is learning happening there. But the next stage would be the actual like doing the experiment, so to speak. So in this sense, with our sports media class, this is where I have the students report out about their different experiences, because they're not all going to the same experience. So some may go to a volleyball match, some may go to a soccer match, some may go to football, baseball, softball, depends on what the season is, but they talk about it because it's interesting that they might even see the same crew workers, but they kind of they learn from each other the different observations, the different things that they notice, because some of them are going to be more focused on, oh, they hit these buttons, while some focus on the communication element of it, and some start picking up on certain lingo along the way, and or how maybe a media director is holding certain people responsible where, hey, they're doing a great job, or hey, you need to do a better job because you were not paying attention to what you were doing. So I try to always explain to students of, you're seeing real world situations happen. This is trying to get real world context, and it's not going to be perfect with what you see. And the mistakes are extremely important to notice as well. All right. Next, we move on to our active experimentation stage. So this is where a lot of people think about this as like authentic application. So you see there in the image, an image from the nursing program. So sometimes they might actually be working with dummies, or even honestly, real world human beings. I actually had a real world thing myself personally when I ended up getting a shot, and I found out that it was a VSU nursing student that was giving me said shot, with an instructor looking on. And they asked me, like, you'd be okay with this? And I was like, well, hey, it's experiential learning. I guess this is what I get paid for. So Thankfully, they did a pretty good job. I didn't bruise too badly. But this is normally kind of one of the more fun parts. This is normally one of those final results that we end up seeing as well along the way. But they're taking what they learned and applying it. And it's not that it might not necessarily be perfect, because this cycle of experiential learning is supposed to be an iterative process. And sometimes the cycle happens numerous times, where you may say, okay, they had that event happen, but then they go maybe back to the drawing board to learn from that experience. So that's kind of how it works in our sports media class, because they do field work, but they do multiple games throughout the semester. So they might do a volleyball game, and then 2 weeks later, they're going to do another volleyball match, and or do a different sport as well. So the cycle kind of keeps going over and over and over again. So with that, what we ask as part of the experiential learning process is we ask the students to submit written reflections using prompts that we provide to you all. There's 3 prompts, and they line up with the 3 student learning outcomes associated with the quality enhancement plan. What we've been finding to make everybody's lives easier is that if you're someone that you trust technology a little bit, I will assist you in building a Microsoft form. Dean Savoy can attest to this now, that he had to do this with students while he was over in Ireland last summer, and it will automate the process. Let the students do it on their phone or a tablet or whatever it might be. It's a lot easier than honestly going through BlazeView, downloading every single thing, and then having to write up. There's all sorts of complicated things that start, but I would recommend thinking about that. We ask you all to evaluate these student reflections using a rubric we provide. It only has 3 rows in the rubric, so it's a 1 to 5 scale. We give you some criteria for that as well. So you can just make a column in Microsoft Excel with your forms download and just write up the scores in that manner. We ask you all to do that within about 30 days. So for example, if you did a fall 2023 activity, normally what we've been saying is we're like, hey, okay, we understand winter break is happening. So we'll be like, okay, try to give it to us by like the start of classes. So normally around that start of the second week, end of the first week of January sort of thing, to give that to us. And then we ask you all to write an instructor reflection along the way, and we give you prompts for that as well. And we only mean to ask you guys like write a couple paragraphs. This is not like a 10-page report we're asking of you all. And you'll even see with the seed grant later on, we don't ask for some gigantic report with that. It's actually just a Microsoft Forms survey where I ask a few questions about, hey, how did it go? And maybe I ask you for photos if you'll give me them. So we have that for marketing style things. So with all that, I know I've spoken a lot so far. Do you all have any questions for us so far? And feel free to honestly open your mic.
Yeah, I have a question. So I guess as you just said that, like the application, I'm thinking about a program. I'm thinking about our foundation year field program, which students are required to do a field placement. So it's just for 1 semester. So it's not for spring. It's just fall.
Okay.
As you do the application, I'm asking.
Yeah, you could do that for this upcoming fall. And essentially what ends up happening each semester is, as long as people have completed each of the items, even if there are issues with some of the items, we normally will say, hey, you're grandfathered in. So let's say you do your fall 2023 activity, you get the materials done. Even if there are issues, I send an email and say, hey, just please improve on these things for the future. You'd be grandfathered into fall 2024 at that point. You don't have to keep reapplying along the way. When it comes to the field work, all we need to know, because I know sometimes that might be unique, is we just need to know the CRNs. So if you have to make multiple CRNs because maybe it's different placements, that's okay.
Right.
Because I literally just I put it in an Excel sheet and I send them over to the registrar, and then Stanley will apply those to the specific course sections that you have told me.
Okay.
So.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So Colin, when we talked originally, so when we have our students are in the field in a P12 classroom, and in our case, it's a middle grades classroom. So would observing, because I started out with them teaching a small group as the first start. So now that I see this, can I tweak that to, they're actually at the very beginning, the first week or two, they're observing their mentor teacher. So I think I want to tweak that and have that first part be when they're truly observing their mentor teacher, writing the reflection. Then they work with their mentor teacher to actually write a lesson plan activity and implement that. And then we go back and reflect again because they're there every week. So I think I'm going to tweak that.
100%. I would 100% and agree with that idea. I don't want to say endorse just yet because I can't make the decision myself. But I think that's a really good idea. And that is the thing, is that sometimes we found that folks don't realize they're doing certain things that are experiential learning. It's just putting a label on it in a lot of instances. And a lot of our early adopters, I'll admit, for the experiential learning endorsement, were folks that we knew were already doing this stuff, and we were just saying, hey, let's put some labels on it, and or maybe enhance just a little bit of the experience, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. However, we do want to inspire some folks to maybe start thinking a little bit more outside the box as well, in terms of different ways to engage the students. It's not applicable to everybody, though. I understand there are certain courses where experiential learning just might not happen. They're not going to require it in every single class at the university. So, all right, awesome.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So on our lesson plan template, we have a place for reflection and reflective teaching. So I'm going to use the one though that that the program provides. Is that right? So should I keep in the lesson plan template the reflective the reflection? I have a rubric. We also have a rubric where we grade the lesson plan or assess the lesson plan and give feedback and that includes the reflection. So should I take that part out?
No, I would leave that in there. So your reflection rubric is going to be probably applicable to the reflective observation part of this. Our rubric is only for the final written reflection. Like it's when you're done with the activity, or honestly, if it's maybe end of the semester. So I'll admit, what I do for my course activities, I actually bake them into the final exam sometimes. And I'll just say, hey, these 3 questions are going to be part of the final exam, and these are these 3 prompts. And I've had a few other instructors tell me they've done the same exact thing. Or some people that will attach a certain number of points and just make it an activity as well. And with that, because we're talking about required things, the only other required thing is we have a pre and a post-test survey. We'll give you all the link for this. We don't make it public because I have to change it every single semester. And that's mainly because of the data analysis, because we found that out the hard way. I think it was the second semester I figured out that I was like, oh, I really should have divided this out because we had to backtrack a little bit, but we made it work. All right. Okay. So with that written reflection, these are the 3 prompts that you see, and these are on the QEP website. I'm gonna just put this in the chat for you all really quickly. And we also have examples of responses on here, and these are actual authentic responses that were given out by students from previous semesters. So that way, if your students are like, hey, I don't know what's expected, you can just be like, here you go. And we picked a different a variety of majors as well. So that way they're kind of seeing different ways that people apply things from research to maybe more creative folks and other things as well. So we recommend just suggesting to students at least 6 sentences in response to each one of the following prompts, just to make sure that they're getting to the depth part of things. In some instances, you're going to have some students that maybe don't do as great of a job as others. What we found is that sometimes it takes a semester or so. What I found in our media program, because we have, I think, 3 instructors, including myself, that have endorsements right now. The more the students have been exposed to these prompts, the more they've gone in depth with the responses from what I'm noticing. They don't see it as normally being a repeat activity. They normally are like, oh, we understand now why you're asking us to do X, Y, and Z. Especially with the upper level students. We hope this kind of starts trickling down to our first and second years, but it's a process. I mean, in all honesty, we're only in, oh goodness, what is this, year 2 that I think we're in? It feels like year 4, but we're in, I think, year 2 right now of this process. So, all right. Banner coding again. There'll be a couple of questions that ask about the length of the activity in terms of contact hours. Just do the best you can with it. This is just helping us with making sure we're coding things the right way. The only time we start asking questions is if you say, like, I think one of the options is like 101 to 150 contact hours. And the only time that might apply is if it is a straight up fieldwork course and they are doing a lot of field work the entire semester. But most people will say like 10 hours or less, or I want to say the next step up is 11 to 30 hours. So nothing too crazy there. It'll also ask you all to identify skills that you feel the students will learn more about through participation in the course. So these kind of line up with some of the questions that are asked in the pre and the post test. And with the data, we began to do this last summer, and we intend to do it this summer too, as long as we get our graduate assistant funded, which I'm actively putting out my fingers crossed on video for that. That person ends up helping me generate instructor reports that we will work to get to you all before August. So that way, if you all have tenure and promotion actions, it's something that you can actually include in your dossier. It's going to have some information related to the pre-test and post-test relative to the number of students in the class, academic standing, feelings on certain things before and after in terms of skills. It's not about you as the instructor, it's just skills. So this is not an SOI in case that sends chills down anyone's spines. All right, I see that question in the chat. Let me go back to that. What you got, Deborah?
Yes. So I have a question about where you talked about the example, the service learning courses, the 10 hours. So if I'm thinking about if we wanted to do our foundation field, that students are in field about, I guess on an average of 15 hours a week. So you were saying that is it 10 that's required or not to go over 10?
No, so 10 hours or less, that's just like the kind of the first interval I'm going to put it. So there'll be a higher interval that will be there for you. So yeah, no worries.
Okay, thank you.
Colin, can I ask another question?
Yep.
So for the categories, is work-based learning appropriate? They're not being paid when they're out there in the field doing their student teaching. So for my situation, would I select work-based learning? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and what'll end up happening is we tried to make the application kind of smart. So that way, if you guys click no, it's not going to present you with all these other options along the way. So you'll notice that like when you hit yes to something, suddenly intervals will begin to show there, because we really wanted to make your guys' lives easier, because the first edition of the application was like 10 pages long. Now it is much shorter. So, all right. So, okay. So on the, I'm going to pull a window over to you all. I'm not going to show you my primary monitor because it gives some people heartburn of how many tabs and or desktop things I have going. So on the Experiential Learning website you see here, honestly, if you guys ever have any questions, you can't access anything, just send me an email because I do control all of this and I can go in and just modify it really quickly if need be. If you go to learning how to apply, you'll see there's the endorsement application and the seed grant program. So if you click on endorsement, it will give you guys some information about how to apply for the endorsement. The important thing I want to highlight here is that we have examples of all of these are previously approved applications. So please feel free to go through these and see what occurred there. And feel free to ask me a question as well if need be too. You'll see the apply here link and what it'll look like for you all. When I click, ta-da, Microsoft Forms, it'll just ask you all these questions. It goes to, I know it says page 1 of 9, don't worry, the pages start disappearing when you click no. This information, you might be like, why are we asking email addresses of department heads and whatnot? So to further make your lives easier, because I know people hate going and asking for signatures from their department head and or dean sometimes. When you do this, it just does it for you. Like it automatically starts sending all these emails, and your dean or department head, all they have to do is click approve, or they can leave me comments and say no, which rarely happens unless there's a significant issue. And normally what I do is I send you guys an email at that point if there's like, hey, what the heck is going on type of thing with something. But we've automated all that in the background to make your guys' lives easier and to hopefully expedite this process for everybody. So with the application, you all will likely know, I'm going to call it by early April, you will know already about the endorsement and actually the seed grant probably as well, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. Let's see. And then again, there are other resources on the website too for things we've talked about so far regarding the experiential learning cycle, along with examples and the quotes that we just mentioned a few moments ago. So as you see here for the endorsement part, if you all have any questions, feel free, you can use my COL Walker address. If you forget my name or something, just type in QEP@valdosta.edu. I look at both of them. You'll submit the application via Microsoft Forms. Again, it goes to department heads and deans for approvals along the way. It goes through a blind peer review process. So I am not the person who's making all the decisions. This is not like a one-person decision type of thing. So I organize a blind peer review process through our Experiential Learning Advisory Committee. And then we all actually meet together to kind of make our final recommendations for all of this. We try to make it as democratic as humanly possible. And it's been a pretty good experience with this committee. Fun time at that meeting. So let's see. And again, if you get the endorsement, I will send you out these whole survey materials, the reflection instrument, the rubric. I send all this out to you all before the start of each semester. And if I forget, just send me an email, I'll do it. All right, so let's talk about the seed grant process a little bit. Because the seed grant process here, this is funding for resources for the students to complete your endorsement activity. All right. This is not the faculty research seed grant, which is for faculty research. So we have to make sure that important designation is out there. Again, we have tried to automate some of this process for you all. to try to streamline it a little bit. Again, it goes through Microsoft Forms. And you might say, where's the link on the website? It's not there. So when you all complete the endorsement application, the last thing it'll ask you is, hey, do you want to apply for a seed grant? And that sends me an email to send you the link at that point. However, if you are someone that, let's say you say, hey, fall 2023, I want to get through the endorsement activity, but seed grant a little too much right now. I'm not sure about it. You can come back to me the next semester and say, hey, now I'm interested. Just let me know. I'll send you the URL at that point so that you can still apply. So I don't put you through that entire process all over again. So again, this is to help serve the students and purchase resources for them. We've had all sorts of things. I had a biology professor about a year ago. She purchased GoPros that they were using over at a local wildlife facility to observe animal behaviors. Okay, so think outside the box a little bit of how can you support your students with this. And we love stuff that can be reused. Michael Black, that'll put a smile on his face when he sees items that can be recycled from one semester to another, because that's a good investment from our perspective. We do understand there are one-offs though. If you have a one-off, just make sure you explain why is it that that unique thing can only be used that one time. So you'll see, ta-da, money. All right, and this is probably really applicable since I'm sure some of you in your respective departments have had to already go through the end of the year spending requests, and you probably know what is getting funded and what's probably not getting funded as well. So you can apply for up to a $4,000 annual award. This can be used across multiple terms as well. So if you want to do like a fall and spring term, that's okay to do that. When it comes to, and this is where actually I'm going to need to defer to Michael for a quick second, because I think we were having this discussion. So Michael, with this being a fall 2023 project, they would just need to encumber the funds before April 30th of this would be what, 2024?
For fall 23.
Okay.
No, I mean, we would like to, if you need to order some equipment or what have you, we'd like to order it as soon as possible after your seed grant has been approved so that the equipment can arrive before fall starts. However, there's a period of time, like Colin said, when the university has its books closed, so there's no purchasing. So, you know, if we know in April, we'll get it done. April, May, we'll get it done. If not, it'll have to wait till, you know, July or early August. So.
Okay. Yeah. So as part of the seed grant application, it will ask you all to submit a budget as part of it. We give you a template of how to do it, and we made life easier for you this time. You can actually upload the file rather than filling in 20,000 boxes in a form. Yeah, so we will try to assist you all as much as possible with trying to get those funding. The good part is supply chains are beginning to get better. I'm noticing that honestly from a technical perspective for how much of my equipment I couldn't get for a year and a half. And now suddenly things I waited on for 9 months can be here in 3 days. Again, just when you go through the application, you will see some information on there. And don't worry, I'll show you guys some more details in just a second about that as well. Again, there will be a separate call in fall 2023 for spring 2024 projects. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. This is a once during fall, once during spring application period timeline. When it comes to the eligibility, both tenure track and tenured faculty are eligible to apply. Full-time staff, full-time lecturers are eligible to apply. And you can also apply both individually or collaboratively. However, we ask that if you do a collaborative application, that it's with other eligible VSU faculty and staff members. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Again, same 3 goals are applicable as with the endorsement process. We'll ask you all about which goals are applicable for your Seed Grant project. Student learning outcomes, these are just associated with the quality enhancement plan. Again, the rubric that we use for the reflections that we spoke about earlier are going to be basically each row is applicable to each one of these respective outcomes. We just mainly ask that the activities are aligned with at least one of these 3 student learning outcomes. We know it's tough to get all 3 in many instances, but for the most part, everybody's been able to get at least one along the way. So we've had multiple projects funded over the years. For example, we had a Russian language class that helped offset expenses when they traveled to Jacksonville, and they essentially went to an area of Jacksonville that has a lot of Russian cultural influence. We had folks go out to the Okefenokee Swamp, collecting water samples, processing those samples in a lab. We had the GoPros that we were speaking about earlier. And they were actually used in multiple locations now I'm thinking about it. I think they went out to Wild Adventures as well. And when you're thinking about some of these funding projects, if you start coming into any sort of red tape where you're like, hey, I wonder how I would get access to those sorts of things, that's the time to please reach out to me, okay? In some instances, I'm going to try to have conversations to maybe say, hey, the so-and-so knows somebody that can help this instructor get in and get access to things. And we'll try to have those conversations for you so that maybe you're not trying to have a brand new introduction. Because I know in some instances, whether it be in town or just in the county or the region in general, sometimes it's tough to get in. But we may have someone, it could be myself, it could be Dr. Black, it could be Dean Savoy, it could be another department head, dean, who knows, that could help get access. Because part of our advisory committee, it's made up of people from all across the institution, which kind of makes our experiential learning unique, where we're not dominated by any one department or college when it comes to this. In terms of allowable expenditures, travel to and from the activity could be part of it. Supplies and materials, some contractual services, maybe certain pieces of equipment that aren't normally provided by the department or other university units as well. So this is where we sometimes ask you all to kind of write up a budget justification, and all this information starts coming out at that point. So all of these, again, these are in the application and on the website as well, which I will show the website in just a minute. Ineligible activities, because this is what everybody normally wants to know about. No, you can't do it as faculty development because we have another fund for faculty development. You can't do it as curriculum development. You can't do it as consulting services. We don't want it to be a profit-oriented project. Let's see, institutional research, and or research done by graduate students to meet thesis or dissertation requirements. So those are the ineligible activities as part of this Experiential Learning Seed Grant program. Other ineligible expenditures, no, you can't get the funds for a graduate assistant. That is where typically most people will go to that faculty research seed grant. I believe that is a place where you can get funding for a graduate assistant in some instances. I know they're great people that you can find to assist you all in your respective projects. So you see a long list of items listed here. Again, these are on the website as well. And just, I'm gonna put the website up for a quick second. I can find that tab. So if we're on the website, go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry. And this, I'm glad Michael Black is here to probably say no. Would it include for student teachers in this middle grades and secondary social studies education, site license for software, like for something like iCivics that they can access for like their lesson planning, to have that to cover the civic standards that are coming down from the DOE. Is that acceptable?
Is it a 1-year license? Is it individual license for the student has to buy, or is it campus license kind of thing?
We could do a seat license that is not specific, where I don't have to do, the names of particular students. So it would be like a site license that maybe the students could use it for a certain period of time and then roll it over to the next cohort of students. But it would be a software application of like resources to design lessons specific to the civic standards that the DOE is implementing.
I mean, that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, we really want the Seed Grant to allow students to participate and not put additional costs,
Right.
out of their pocket.
Okay.
And it's really designed it's for undergraduate students. So we want our undergraduate students to get an experience that they would not. And if the civics module is something they need to produce a great experience, then I don't see why that would be a problem. I think it would be great if you can, like you said, get more than one term out of it,
Right.
so that
Yeah.
lots of students could benefit from it.
Right. Yeah.
How much
And
is
that's
it?
one of the
Is
things
it?
I'm looking a site license rather than the individual, where you assign it to a student.
Mhm.
So I'll look at that. But that was
I
kind
would
of
put
where I
that
was thinking.
on there.
Okay. And sometimes, as you know, with software applications, Colin, you too, like sometimes you can just replace student names. If it is specific to a student logon, we can say, okay, they're going to have this access to this particular time. Now I'm going to replace student A with student B. And, so I'll get all the information from iCivics on that. But that's kind of where I was thinking about. This way, when they go off into the field, and they're sort of on their own a little bit more for student teaching, and then when they get their first assignment, that's a great resource to help them create those lessons that align to the DOE's required standards. So that's kind of what I was thinking. Thank you.
One thing I do want to recommend to kind of help you out with that is if you do want to go that route, what you might want to do is contact IT to have them get the official quote for you. And what I would recommend doing is also include in the message that you're interested in a floating license. They'll understand the lingo, and that'll be able to make it so that way you could reassign over the course of that annual period for the different students. So as we're speaking about the Seed Grant program, as you'll notice on the website, the learning how to apply, there's a drop down for Seed Grant. On here, you will see information that we've spoken about today. You'll also see examples of approved applications right down here. Okay. These 3 links up here, these have essentially been now embedded into the Microsoft Forms process, but this is going to tell you the questions that are going to be asked of you. And I would honestly say just download the budget template in advance and just start working on that, because you can actually just download that file and then just upload it into the Microsoft form, and it will just kind of adhere to your application. So that way, when we're reviewing it, we will be able to see your budget along the way through the magic of coding that has occurred in the background. So that's that I would strongly recommend looking at if you guys are thinking about Seed Grant. Let's see, again, it goes through a review process. Again, it is a blind peer review process that we go through. I'm the only person who knows who it is because I assign all the reviewers, but we eventually all do come back together. And again, we have people from all over the institution, and we will reach out with questions if we have questions and or look for certain expertise along the way. Let's see. As part of the application documents, you all will see these are things that were just referred to on the website. It'll ask about a basic project narrative, and you can actually write this up in a file, Microsoft Word file now, and just upload that to us. Any budgeting type of things, how how it is aligns with the QEP, many different things that we have there. So, all right, and next, let's see. You can see here, all the applications are going to be due February 27th by 5 p.m. So just to kind of give perspective on that, February 27th is going to be a Monday by 5 p.m. So for those of you who maybe are procrastinate just a little bit, you will have that final weekend to do it. I will say I'm asking everybody to get questions into me by February 17th though, because people will try emailing me questions on February 26th at 10 p.m. And with now having a small child here, I will not be awake at that time to be answering said questions. No offense to everybody. But please just let me know whatever questions you all have. We are going to make a goal of notifying everybody about final decisions by early April. That way you all know well in advance that you have the resources ready to go for your fall 2023 course activities, so that you have confidence as you are planning out your course. And somehow we have magically timed this to exactly 11 o'clock. So does anybody have any final questions regarding things at all?
I do have a question,
Okay.
Colin. So, as you kind of started it out, this is more so for undergraduate programs and courses. So, are graduate applications ranked lower than undergrad, or is it not encouraged for graduate programs to apply?
I'm going to defer on Michael to that one, but I would say we're definitely gearing towards undergrad.
Yes,
Right,
it's
I know
definitely
that, right.
geared towards undergraduate, but we have endorsed a graduate course
Okay.
in a prior term.
Okay.
It's not a competition. We'll endorse as many courses that qualify. It's just
Okay.
by their nature, a lot of graduate courses are experiential learning. So, you know, the students are going to get that, whereas undergraduate students don't have that.
Right.
That opportunity. We definitely want the seed grant to be towards a undergraduate experience.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you can definitely do it. I mean, if you're interested in participating in the QEP, or you have faculty are interested in getting, like Colin said, some evidence that they are providing high quality instruction, you know, that's one of these. That's what the endorsement can do. It's been peer reviewed that we're saying, yes, this is a high quality instructional activity. So
yeah,
that answers my question.
Yeah, because we wanted it to.
Question. That's a great question.
Awesome.
Because then I might do the ed leadership, teacher leadership, where they're actually all of their tasks are in the field. So thank you, Deborah. I got to tackle the undergraduate one first, but if I have time this month, I might do the EDS degree, because Michael, like you said, and I talked to Colin about this, everything they do in teacher leadership, all those tasks have to be done in a school and approved by their principal and their superintendent that they've actually done the tasks. But again, it's going back to what Colin has coached me on of fitting it in the model. So
I definitely start with one section or one class. Don't do 3 sections because or 3 classes. It's just too much.
Yeah.
And of course, I'd say we'd love to have as many, but folks that have done 3 found out it's too many to keep. It's too much to keep up with. So just getting with one section or one class.
I think I'm going to start with the undergraduate, the 4,300, see how it goes. But knowing that, now that Deborah's brought that up, it's just, you know, getting them the acknowledgement, like Colin talked about, is because they're doing the work, is nice on their
well, and we really, and I think you mentioned, you know, we really would love 1,000 and 2,000 level courses, because students are getting this in the upper division, but we really want them to get it, the experience in the lower division. But it's not always possible. But
I don't teach any of those, but
you don't teach any of those, but hopefully some of your colleagues do. Maybe there's some gateway courses that there would be an experiential learning component.
I will just shamelessly plug right now the fact that later this spring, we will have a call for experiential learning faculty ambassadors. So if you're someone that maybe is a great advocate, you can maybe consider that process. I have no idea what the deadline is just yet because I haven't established it, but I would assume it's going to be probably late March into April. Yeah, I would encourage you to apply because I already know there are going to be spots opening up because that process works where a person can only do it for a maximum of 2 terms, but they have to apply for each one of the terms. And I mean, a maximum of a term is a year. So that's kind of how that works. And you guys will see some of the workshops that they're facilitating coming up soon. And I forgot to mention this earlier, that if you guys do want kind of more of kind of like a lesson about experiential learning and whatnot, if you go to experiential learning workshops, we have recordings of some of the previous workshops. Some of them are probably from your respective colleges. We have like a science-based one here, Jennifer Beal from education. So those are ways for you all to see kind of some lessons regarding experiential learning about these respective topics. They're working to hopefully roll some out this month, but we kind of had a late start to things due to me having to be out for Miss Stella, and then also having surgery that I had a little bit of a later start to the semester than I had anticipated. Let's see.
One thing I want to add too is I volunteered for the VSU open house. And one of the very first, one of the most common questions when they came to the College of Ed, you know how they do the breakouts,
Yep.
was how soon do we get in the field? How can we get out, you know, and be with the students and the grade levels we're interested in. So it was pretty interesting. It was the number one question that they had. So to your point about, yeah.
And we're trying to market, I mean, and that's why we're trying to market these things. And if you guys see on social media, it's like VSU Trailblazers. That's all the marketing that we're trying to do kind of in-house / in the Honors College building or at my house right now. We're trying to market those things and make sure people are getting recognition. And we want to make sure it's the students getting highlighted, but I want to make sure you all are being highlighted as instructors too, which is why we're doing those data reports for you all. When we give those to you all before August, please understand it's voluntary, whether or not you want to include those. But when we saw the rollout of the new faculty evaluation models, we thought it may support some of you and help you all out to justify things that maybe were not as easy to justify in the past in the traditional AFRAP report. So let's see, any other final questions? All right, well, thank you so much for coming today, and I really appreciate the interaction part. That's kind of the more fun way to do these open forums. I like having dialogue rather than talking to just a screen and not being sure if people are listening. So oh, that is fancy. I didn't know how to do hand clapping on my screen just yet, but the things that I learned. If you all have any questions, feel free again, please reach out to me, qep@valdosta.edu and or my colwalker@valdosta.edu. Either one, you will make it to me. And then other than that, I look forward to hopefully seeing your guys' applications, and feel free to tell all your friends about it too. And that it's an easy process, and we're trying to, and if you guys find things that you're like, hey, I have a question, something's not working, or you say, hey, this is maybe something you can do to improve it, please understand, I love constructive criticism. I adore it because I know there's a better way to do what we're doing, because this has been something that's been evolving for 2 years, but I'm sure there's something we can do better in the future. So, other than that, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.